expressed are those of the guests and not necessarily those of the producer. Today's topic:
Censoring the Internet in Passion for Truth, award-winning program.
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. The Indian government is taking a legal action against 21 social networking sites, including Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft, for offenses of promoting enmity between classes and causing prejudice to national integration. Is India's request reasonable considering its culture and traditions, or is India carving its own ironies after reaching the peak of economic achievement? All next with our panelists, Jaswant Raj, editor of North of America for Hindustan Times as Indian newspaper, Dr. Daisy Chawla, scientist who maintains a scientific perspective on psychological and social issues, Scott Wheeler, executive director of National Republican Trust Pact, and Dr. Edward Hudgens from the Atlas Society, formerly an editor at the Cato Institute. Welcome you all. Starting with you, Ed, how do you read the battle between the Indian government, the social networking sites? I mean, it wants them to screen offensive content about religious figures and political leaders as soon as they learn about it. Do these sites need to be prosecuted?
Well, no, of course not. I mean, what's happening here is India is facing the challenge of understanding what individual rights are and what a true liberal open society is. The challenge that the West had to face 200-300 years ago, when in the West we decided that, for example, free speech is a basic human and individual right, that there is no right not to be offended. That's the interesting thing about the way the Indian government is proceeding, is that it's absolutely impossible. It's an absolutely impossible law to execute. After all, the things that I might find very offensive, I might say, I believe that these religions should be censored because the stuff that they're promoting is superstitious, it's ugly, and, and so forth, so they should be censored. And then, of course, the people who are members of those religions will turn around to me and say, I think what Ed is saying offends me, and so Ed should be censored. There's no way you can actually sort it out. In any case, there is no right not to be offended. If you want to live in an open society, you got to act like an adult, not like a stupid little child. That's what an adult does. An adult says, yeah, people are going to disagree with me. I got my opinions, you got your opinions. Hey, that's the way it is.
Scott, what do you think? Will the websites go dark to highlight protest as it has happened in the U.S.?
Well, quite possibly. But I think to reaffirm what Ed has said, it's a fundamental right to be able to criticize ideas and things that you disagree with, and without the fundamental right to do that, well, we see in China frequently where certain websites are blocked, information is blocked. That can only go on so long without enablers, and in the case of China, they had United States enablers who sold them the equipment to use to block the information from reaching Chinese citizens. So India will soon have to make a decision, a governmental decision, whether or not they're going to purchase the ability to block certain things that they might find offensive or that people shouldn't have access to. And it puts them in a very dangerous category with nations like China and elsewhere.
Dangerous category, Daisy?
Yeah, it's very difficult to actually block websites. I mean, here in the U.S., the SOPA bill, and then what was the Senate's version? PIPA, got slammed. And I think that it's one of the marvelous things about the web is that there are no boundaries. There's free flow of ideas, and it almost it encourages that in all of its users. How one goes about restricting websites that are inappropriate, that's very delicate. I think that one has to actually involve in the policy-making process. One has to involve the online companies themselves, to involve Google and Yahoo and Facebook, and craft a means by which to, for instance, avoid, and I'm not talking about censorship anymore, I'm talking about the piracy issues that has got everybody in the U.S. all worked up.
Just one is the request to for censorship, taking the nation to the dynastic rule, do you think?
It's in India there's that possibility is always there, but let's look at the let's put the India problem in a context, right? And I would agree with Ed and build on that a little bit. It's a learning curve for India. And you should see the way India has reacted to the this latest challenge. And so they said, okay, we need you guys to screen these things and keep them out. And you're right, the specific reference was to Sonia Gandhi websites, to which Google came back and said, anything which doesn't violate our policy stays up, and that's it. And government of India has backed down for a bit. So it's a bit of a learning experience for India. I mean, it pushes, and it's all about control. Government of India and everybody else, they think in India they're fighting a battle for control. They want to control the net, as they wanted to control books at one time. If you remember, they're the ones who banned Rushdie's book, Satanic Verses. I mean, I think Iran has forgotten about the fatwa, but in India it's still an issue. It's a lot about control, and like they wanted to control culture, they wanted to control books, they wanted to control the net now, and they will gradually learn they cannot. It's a battle they can't ever win. So that's the context that in which you should put.
Just one raises an interesting point, Ed, that many internet sites will remove any material that violates their terms, and the material that is hateful or threatening in any way. Should India accept those parameters?
Well, if you're talking about the Indian government, what I would say is this. Part of the nice thing about the web is that, in a sense, you make your own rules. So if I have a website, I post my material on a lot of different websites, and some of them have certain kinds of restrictions where they say, well, if you have a discussion and you're calling people certain names, we're going to put you under moderation, or we're not going to let you post anymore, or something. I actually got banned from a website because I did what was not a name calling thing. It was a very thoughtful and scholarly discussion of gay marriage. And I say that I believe that it's a right of gay people to make whatever contract they want, and conservatives should favor this. And I got banned because they didn't like my opinion. I think they were stupid and boorish, but that is their policy. And guess what? I can go on other websites and I can post my opinions, and I can say these guys over here are stupid and boorish. So in other words, you have a competition not only between ideas, but between what kind of policies are we going to have. And some websites are very open, some are more restrictive. When I send out emails from one of the email servers we use, anytime the word Nazi appears in there, it gets flagged. And it might just be that I'm talking about if you look at history, you find this and this, and it's just because they don't want people calling each other Nazis, and I don't do that. But the point is, it's nice to see a competition between rules and what works and what doesn't.
Scott, majority of Indians are the Gandhi dynasty, and they are deeply offended if ugly pictures of Indira Gandhi or Sonia Gandhi appear on the internet in any form. We are talking about democracy, but if majority of people get offended, should the internet change its rules?
Well, I think they have to consider that they aren't forced to look at offensive images. There's many things on the internet that I find offensive, and so I try to avoid them. And so I think it's up to the individual, and again, it comes back to individual rights. You have the right you don't have the right not to be offended, but if you intentionally engage something that will offend you, then you really don't have much room to be concerned. Maybe they don't want to look at an offensive image of the Gandhi family, but why should they care if somebody else does?
Can I add to that? What is a majority? Majority of the Indian population, which again, only 61 million people in India have access to the net, of a population of 1.2 billion. So that's hardly a majority, right? Now, if you look at the entire net user base world over, just a handful of people had objections to that, right? So that's not the majority.
Your point is interesting because I think it's important to note that I personally do not favor democracy in the Athenian way. I favor a republican system of checks and balances. It doesn't have to be called a republic, it could be a parliamentary system. But the whole insight of the West is that governments are dangerous, fundamentally dangerous. Their purpose is to protect the life, liberty, and property of individuals, but we have to have a system of checks and balances to make sure that the opinion of the moment, the mob rule, so to speak, doesn't dominate. So the whole purpose of a republic or a system of checks and balances is to make sure that the majority of opinion of the moment doesn't necessarily determine what we do, that it has to go through different ways. We have parliaments, we have judges and judiciary, da-da-da-da-da. So let's make sure that we're talking about a system of checks and balances.
Okay, Daisy, India has the third largest internet user community in the world. And if you go by that, is the request for censorship needs special consideration? Posting ugly pictures could become a weapon in the hands of politicians if they want to play one group against another.
Yeah, but you know, I don't know, the internet is an on-demand service. No one is forced to take a look at any one thing. You know, it's not in the front page of the newspaper that is circulated around. You have to participate in whatever it is that you're looking at. So it's very hard to say that you know, any one group is trying to slander another group, because you're not commanding any internet user to take a look at any one thing. It is all proactive. So I don't even get it, frankly, these allegations.
Scott, when Indira Gandhi, India's Prime Minister, was assassinated in 1984, the government-controlled media, electronic media, displayed flashes of revenge-killing posters that read "blood for blood, blood for blood," and those posters did inflame the passions of the people a great deal. With internet, it could happen even worse.
I think freedom can tolerate a lot, and people's passions being inflamed is no reason to prevent the free and open exchange of ideas, even if they do offend. I think a law and order society protects people from physical harm that might come about from the passions that others might feel in terms of hurting someone else, harming someone else, or harming their property. But I think even the idea of the concept of individual liberty tolerates the very essence of inflaming passions, and it must tolerate it.
Okay, let me go to this one. Now India has introduced, as you know, new rules that called on websites, services, and search engines to not host the information that could be recorded as harmful or disparaging, and to remove the offensive material within 36 hours of a complaint. How do you determine what will be disparaging and what will be?
I have a problem with that again. It's a lost battle that the government of India is trying to win. I mean, when you spoke about you know, how pictures or images could trigger violence or riots, you know, in India riots have happened over as small a thing as, you know, walking on the wrong side of the road, but there has not been one riot because of the net or whatever appeared on the net. So there you are. I mean, net hasn't incited even one instance of violence anywhere yet. So to hold the net, or to be in fear, live in fear of what could appear on the net, it's a completely imaginary fear that the government of India and India should and will eventually overcome.
You know, it's an interesting point, because one of the trials, historic trials, in what would become the United States was with Peter Zenger, was that his name? Zenger, in Pennsylvania, and the Crown did not like the criticism that this man in his newspaper made of the governor. And there was a trial. This was under the colonial rule, and the principle was established that the truth is its own defense. That this guy was saying what he wanted. There was no implication of slander at all. He was telling the truth, and so if the governor doesn't like it, too damn bad. That was a principle established centuries ago. I'd also like to say it's okay to offend. I spend a lot of my job trying to offend people who I think are absolutely wrong about something and who are harming other people. I write things about Scientology. It is a dangerous religious cult that destroys people, and I want to offend them. I want to get in their face. I want them to get upset and ticked off, okay? And that's what I do. And if they don't like it, then they can, change their ways, or, they go hide in a hole. I wish they'd all go hide in a hole. One of the things that is new about the Internet is that everything goes up there. A lot of absolute garbage goes up there. A lot of absolute name calling and so forth goes up there. A lot of quality stuff goes up there, and everything in between. It used to be we had a system in this country where there was an editorial process where it cost money to put up newspapers and so forth. So a lot of the garbage got, filtered out. Now it's all out there on the Internet. Part of a mature society is to learn how to sort, the junk from the
Did you come on, Daisy?
Well, I think it would be really great if the number of Internet users in India were to reach a critical mass to the point where they could, in fact, challenge any attempted censorship on the part of the Indian government. January the 18th, Wikipedia shut down for in this country in order to make a certain simple point. That you can't just randomly pass legislation that hasn't that might influence all of Internet. And I think it would be great if the Internet could play a sort of a democratizing influence in India, and I think that day is just to come.
We're taking a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how do the social networking sites threaten India's national integration. There are roughly 17 freedom-fighting movements going on in India. Given free access, could they have the potential to break up India? How do we compromise with the free self-expression? All next. Stay with us, Passion for Truth. So how do we compromise with the free self-expression? Without the Internet, those who are asking for freedom would give in to hopelessness. Internet provides them the opportunity to find one another, and they can use the Internet to insist on fairness or join together in protest. Is that something that could threaten national integration, Scott?
I don't see how it would threaten integration. Knowledge and understanding of one another, each class understanding the other, I think is essential to integration. And so I don't see how it would interfere with that, other than to help promote it.
Jasmine, what do you think? How does it threaten the national integration?
I don't, and I agree with Scott. Free flow of knowledge, information only will bring the disparate groups together, and it's when you go after them and you run after them that they go underground, and that's when they begin to take a life of their own. But let them, social networks, let them tweet the demands, let them have Facebook pages, let people go to their websites, let people talk to them and see what the problems are about. And I don't think that will lead to India falling apart. I mean, and some of these freedom movements are like Rick Perry saying he wants Texas to secede. I mean, these are not all serious freedom fighters. I mean, freedom from what? I mean, so let's put some of these freedom fight movements in perspective too. So social networks, I don't think will have that kind of impact on India. The country is too strong, and fabric is too.
Scott, during the crusade against corruption in India, India's communication minister called the representatives of the social networks and snapped, and I quote here, "I do not want any anti-government stuff on your networks. Fix it." What do you make of that warning?
Well, I think I would say that the people in India need the social networks more than the social network promoters need India.
Why?
Well, I think that the knowledge and information that's flowing that direction is far more helpful to the citizens of India, even if it angers the government. The government has to learn that it can go one way or another. It's going, if it decides to ban social networking sites and filter information coming in, it's going to go the way of communist China and Iran and Syria, in places that are hostile to personal freedom. And so I think in the one sense the government has to learn to tolerate criticism of itself, and if people are allowed to make those criticisms known, then perhaps they will be less hostile towards the government. There'll be less enmity between the government and the citizens. It will foster a relationship of trust.
Actually, you could put it another way. If the government of India wants to censor anyone who criticizes it, then that's a good reason to overthrow it, because there are a bunch of armed thugs who say, I don't like what you are saying, and therefore we have guns and we're going to put you in jail. That's what a thug does, and that's why revolutions justly occur, is to overthrow thugs and to establish individual liberty. Of course, obviously, when we say the government of India, you know, there are lots of things the government of India does clearly that are good things. What I'm saying is that the government of India is kind of facing the same challenges that Western governments faced in the past centuries. That is to say, learning how to live with the fact that their goal is not to be rulers and rajas and potentates. Their job is to protect the individual rights of citizens.
Just wonder, what do you make of it if people post ugly cartoons or pictures of Indian president or Indian prime minister or other top-notch politicians? Would it create problems for the country?
Not at all. Why should it? There are enough obscene pictures, nude pictures, morphed pictures of these politicians on the web, and they're there. People don't even notice them. Now, you know, if somebody wants to show himself or herself more loyal to the king than the king himself or herself, then you say, okay, look, there is somebody trying to insult you. Nobody cares. I mean, there is, and you know.
If you don't like it, tough. Learn to be a big boy, a big girl. You know, that's what freedom is about.
Yeah, I mean, and let me point this out.
In America, the politicians put themselves naked on the
yeah, there you are. But also, for every time the government has tried to act against freedom, there has been enough of a reaction within the country for it to back down. You know, the government tried to take on BlackBerry for a while, right? So BlackBerry was, of course, fighting the government of India, but there were enough people in India who were like openly taking BlackBerry's side. That, look, why do you have to go after them? I mean, you know, so it's a democracy. That's the way things work. And
you know, there's another issue, though, that I think is the deeper issue here. India's history has been one of a lot of internal dissension. I mean, the fact that there's an India and a Pakistan was the fact that you know, what the colonial British put together couldn't stay together. We know India has Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and they have different classes, and there are all of these class issues and religious differences.
Which country doesn't have them?
Exactly the point. Exactly the point. You see this everywhere. You see Western Europe, you know, has gone through centuries of that, and they're still trying to figure out what they are. Are they a federation or whatever? This is what all countries have to face, is the issues of community, and to focus down and blame the messenger, so to speak, or the medium, the internet, you know, gets away from the more fundamental issues about creating an ethos of tolerance and what I would call liberalism in the Western sense.
Okay, Scott, could it be that India is accustomed to its age-old traditions of censoring everything? I mean, the print media is very aggressive in India, but the electronic media is still government controlled. And the government finds it hard to imagine why these networks, social network sites, cannot download the internet and fax it to the government for censorship.
It's quite impractical, but I think that
if you are, you know, maintaining a certain tradition, it's very hard to deviate from those traditions.
Smash it.
Sure, and people who are in power and want to protect their ability to remain in power have an interest in suppressing outside thoughts and
Kings
ideas.
and tyrants don't like to be challenged.
That's right.
Which is why they should be challenged.
It's the same, you know, it's just a matter of human nature that you're dealing with at this point, with people who have power can suppress ideas that might challenge what they say. Then,
so Daisy, could it be a matter of ignorance that the government does not understand that the internet media is distributed and the censor board no censor board can fix it, and most content is hosted outside India's jurisdiction?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a matter of ignorance.
Oh, I'm sure they're quite aware of. I'm sure that they're quite aware of the diffusive nature of the web, and I think these are just, adolescent attempts at trying to control it. But I just don't think it can be done. It's just not within the realm of the technology. You were going to say.
Can I add to a previous question of Scott? I know for a fact that television in India, television news, is not controlled by this government. I am from the media, I know, and so...
You mean the electronic media?
Electronic media, which is television or the net, it's not controlled. News media is not controlled by the government as much or as less as in the US or anybody in the free world. So media there is completely free and subject to the same pulls and pressures that media houses and media are subject to anywhere in the world. In the US, I mean, it's between Fox and MSNBC, who's for, so.
Okay. That's a good point. Okay, we'll be right back with our closing comments. Stay with us, Passion for Truth. Will, one final thought from each of our panelists, will the tech companies be able to fight the new Indian rules regulating the internet without being prosecuted, starting with you, Ed?
Of course. You cannot stop this new technology and everything that it's brought upon in the world. You see that in the Middle East, you see that in the United States. The government of India had just better learn that this is what freedom means and get used to it.
Absolutely. It's something that it might take 5 to 10 years to get used to, but it will eventually open up.
Daisy?
Yeah, I think it's a vehicle for more freedoms.
Oh no, they have nothing to worry about in India. It's just a temporary thing, and it'll go away.
And that's all the time we have. We'll bring you another edition of Passion for Truth next Saturday and Sunday. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all.
If you have any question, comment, or suggestion on this program, please send us an email at mschawla@hotmail.com or write to us at 1011 Salt Meadow Lane, McLean, Virginia, 22101. You can also access these TV programs and the radio programs archived on the internet at your own time on the internet at our page www.passionfortruthtv.com. Please watch these TV programs every week at the same station and at the same time, and send your comments to mschawla@hotmail.com.
Their voice heard in other parts of the world, have they now been remembered as heroes? Let's see what our panelists have to say next. Dr. Edward Hudgens from the Atlas Society, formerly an editor at the Cato Institute. Scott Wheeler, Executive Director of National Republican Trust PAC. Dr. Amarjeet Singh, Director Voices for Freedom, also columnist for several newspapers. Dr. Abul Hassan Ansari, a researcher on the historical perspectives of Indian events impacting on Muslims in India and abroad, and Dr. John Waldice, formerly a president and vice chancellor of Central Uganda University. welcome you all, starting with you, John.
Just one second.
Are you picking up the audio? No, not at all. You don't have
I'm
to
getting
pause.
audio here.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good.
Starting with you, John, everywhere this year people have complained about failure of their leadership in some ways, but the suicidal act of the Tunisian fruit vendor in a small town sparked protests all over the world. Will the people in the Middle East credit you with credit as a hero?
Well, that's a good question, but a difficult one to answer, because time, of course, will tell whether or not that is so. But at the moment, he certainly is considered the hero of the people because he made the ultimate sacrifice, which is his own life. And so people at the moment will see him as a hero. Whether at the end, say 10, 100 years from now, he'll still be a hero or just a mark in the history book, we don't know.
Dr. Musari, what is remarkable is that this year began as an independent, protests began as independent affairs, not backed by existing political parties or opposition parties.
I think this, first of all, let me comment about this suicide thing. I don't think anybody who commits suicide should be named as a hero of a moment or hero of the nation.
Circumstances underway.
Situation in Tunisia, if you look into the history from, I'll tell you from the very beginning, Bou Raqiba was the prime minister or president, whatever he was. He was a puppet of the West, and the people, the masses, didn't like that. And that has been kept on going and going and going. The condition has become much worse. So the people were looking for some spark. And they would have rebelled sooner or later. If I were him, I wouldn't commit suicide. I mean, I will launch a peaceful movement. If necessary, I'll pick up the arms to liberate the country and liberate the people. That's the right thing to do, not simply committing suicide. And I don't think this will be forgotten as the time goes by. Because somebody who commits suicide, I don't know how he can be a hero. That's it.
What do you make of it, Dr. Singh? Was his sacrifice in vain, or do you think he will be known as a hero